Clara Mitchell, 28, walked briskly down the busy streets of downtown, clutching a small velvet box in her hand. Inside lay a ring, once meaningful, now nothing more than a relic of a past she was determined to close the door on. Her ex, Ryan, had insisted she return it to someone he claimed would take care of it, but he hadn't told her anything else. Clara wasn't sure what to expect. A casual stranger. A friend of Ryan's. She braced herself for anything. The streets were crowded with commuters, taxis, and office workers hurrying to catch their trains. Clara kept a tight grip on the box, her mind racing. She felt a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "It's just a ring," she whispered to herself. "But why does this feel so important?" She arrived at a small, quiet cafe, chosen because Ryan said the person would be there around this time. She entered, scanning the room, her heart beating faster. The barista gave her a polite nod, but there was no one obvious waiting. Then he appeared. A man in a tailored suit, tall and composed, approached her table. His hair was dark, neatly styled, and his presence commanded attention without arrogance. He carried himself with effortless confidence, yet his eyes held a curiosity that immediately intrigued Clara. "You must be Clara," he said, his voice smooth and polite. "I understand you have something for me." Clara blinked, slightly startled. "Yes, the ring," she said, holding out the box. "Ryan asked me to return it." He took the box gently, examining it carefully before closing it and returning his gaze to her. "I see. And you're?" he asked, his tone neutral but probing, as if he wanted to understand the person standing before him. "Clara," she replied, her voice steady despite the sudden tension. "Clara Mitchell." She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, feeling exposed under his watchful eyes. He smiled faintly, a subtle expression that didn't give much away. "Thank you for bringing this. I appreciate it." Clara nodded, unsure what else to say. The interaction was polite, but something about the man felt significant, though she couldn't put her finger on why. There was an intensity in his gaze, a weight behind his presence that made her instinctively cautious. For a moment they stood in silence. Clara wondered if this was the moment she would simply hand over the ring and walk away, leaving the past behind. But something in the way he observed her, the faint admiration and attention to detail, made her hesitate. She wanted to ask questions, but politeness kept her words restrained. "Ryan mentioned you'd be important to someone," Clara said carefully, her curiosity getting the better of her. "I don't know exactly why, but..." The man's expression changed slightly, a flicker of surprise crossing his features. "He did?" he asked softly, as if the information had reached him unexpectedly. Then he collected himself, smiling faintly again. "Well, in that case, thank you for doing this. It matters more than you realize." Clara felt a shiver run down her spine. There was something enigmatic about him, something commanding and yet considerate. She had expected a stranger, maybe even an awkward encounter, but this man carried a presence that made her pulse quicken. "Is everything all right?" he asked, noticing her hesitancy. "Yes," she said quickly. "I'm fine. She paused, unsure how much to reveal. "I guess I didn't expect this to feel important." He nodded slowly, tucking the box carefully into his coat pocket. "Sometimes the smallest gestures carry the biggest weight," he said quietly. His tone suggested experience, calm authority, and perhaps influence. Clara's curiosity piqued. There was something about him she didn't yet understand, something that made her feel both intrigued and cautious. They exchanged a few more polite words, and Clara realized that this wasn't just about the ring, it was about the man standing before her. There was intelligence behind his eyes, careful observation, and a subtle command that made it clear he was used to influence and decision-making. She had no idea who he really was, but she sensed that this moment, returning the ring, would change more than just her interaction with a stranger. Finally, the man straightened, offering a polite nod. "Thank you again, Clara. You've done well." Clara nodded back, feeling a mixture of relief and curiosity. As she turned to leave, she didn't notice the brief, calculating glance he gave her, a glance that suggested the encounter was far more than a simple ring exchange. Unbeknownst to Clara, the man she had just returned the ring to was Ethan Lancaster, the billionaire CEO secretly preparing to buy her company, and this seemingly ordinary interaction was only the beginning of a chain of events that would change her life completely. After Clara had returned the ring, she couldn't stop thinking about the stranger. His composed demeanor, the subtle authority in his voice, and the faint, almost imperceptible warmth in his eyes. She had assumed the encounter would be mundane, a simple exchange, and yet, something about him lingered in her mind like a shadow that refused to fade. The next morning, her inbox was filled with the usual flood of emails from her small startup Claritech, but one stood out. A message from an unknown address, brief but deliberate. "I would like to meet you regarding the future of your company. Tomorrow noon. Please come prepared." Clara's heart raced. The timing, the phrasing, it felt both urgent and important. She couldn't shake the feeling that it was the same man from the cafe, the one who had collected the ring. The unknown sender signed it simply, E.L. The next day, Clara arrived at the office, nervous but determined. She had prepared for this meeting meticulously, reviewing financial statements, investor reports, and recent projections. The office, though modest, reflected the hard work and passion she had poured into building her startup. Every detail mattered to her, and she would not let it slip through her fingers. The conference room door opened and he walked in. Ethan Lancaster, the stranger from the cafe, now fully revealed, exuded an air of calm authority and confidence. His tailored suit, the subtle shine of his polished shoes, and the aura of control were balanced by an approachable, almost personable expression. "Clara Mitchell," he said smoothly, extending a hand. "Thank you for meeting me on such short notice." Clara shook it, her grip firm but cautious. "I assume this is about my company?" she asked, her voice steady, though her pulse quickened. Ethan nodded, taking a seat across from her. "Yes, I'm interested in discussing a potential acquisition. But before any business talk, I wanted to acknowledge your integrity. Returning the ring yesterday. It spoke volumes about your character." Clara blinked, surprised. "The ring. That was just routine," she replied, unsure whether to feel embarrassed or curious. "It was far from routine," Ethan said, leaning back slightly. "It showed honesty, respect, and attention to detail. Qualities I value, not just in business but in people I engage with." His tone was measured, yet there was a subtle warmth that made her stomach flutter unexpectedly. For a moment, the conversation drifted to trivialities, but both were aware of the underlying tension. Clara watched him, noticing how he analyzed her subtly, gauging her reactions, her poise, her confidence. He wasn't just evaluating her company. He was evaluating her character, her ability to lead, her resilience. Ethan then shifted to business. "Clara, I've reviewed Claritech's projections, the products, and your growth potential. I see immense value in your company, but I want to do this correctly, ensuring you and your team are respected in the process." Clara's eyebrows raised. "Respect?" she asked. "Most potential investors don't care about the team. They just care about profit margins and control." Ethan nodded, meeting her gaze. "I understand. That's why I wanted to meet personally. I want to ensure you retain the autonomy and recognition you deserve while facilitating growth and stability for Claritech." Clara's mind raced. Here was a stranger, a billionaire, who not only had the resources to elevate her company but also the integrity to respect her leadership. It was both intimidating and reassuring. They spent the next several hours discussing projections, strategies, and potential acquisition plans. Clara was impressed by Ethan's insights. His experience, analytical thinking, and strategic vision were impressive, yet he conveyed them without arrogance. He listened carefully, considered her ideas seriously, and challenged her only constructively. During breaks, they talked about lighter things: her motivations, her struggles as a small business owner, and his experiences leading large organizations. Each conversation revealed layers. Clara discovered Ethan's humility, his empathy, and his genuine interest in people beyond numbers. Ethan, in turn, became aware of her determination, intelligence, and ethical approach to business. Noah was never far from Clara's thoughts, and she subtly mentioned the challenge of balancing work with being a single mother. Ethan's expression softened noticeably. "Managing all this while raising a child, that's extraordinary," he said quietly. "Few people could handle that with the grace you demonstrate." Clara looked at him, startled by the sincerity. "Grace? I'm just trying to survive," she admitted softly. "Survival is only part of it," Ethan replied. "It's how you navigate challenges, maintain integrity, and make decisions that truly defines you. And from what I've seen, you've done all of this admirably." The subtle admiration in his tone was unmistakable, yet carefully restrained. Clara felt a strange warmth, realizing that the connection formed in the cafe and at the ring handover was not accidental. It was continuing, evolving naturally through respect, intellect, and subtle trust. By the end of the meeting, Ethan stood and extended his hand. "Clara, whatever you decide regarding the acquisition, know this. I value your leadership, your integrity, and your vision. You've impressed me far beyond what I expected." Clara shook his hand, her heart pounding with a mix of awe, curiosity, and the faintest hint of attraction. "Thank you," she whispered, the weight of the compliment settling over her. As she left the office, she couldn't stop thinking about him. The calm authority, the respect, and the subtle warmth that had drawn her in. She realized that her life, her company, and perhaps her heart, were now entangled in a story she hadn't anticipated. The stranger collecting a ring yesterday had revealed himself to be far more than just a passerby. He was a man who could change everything, in business and beyond. The following week, Clara had returned to the rhythm of her daily life at Claritech, overseeing operations, meeting with her small but dedicated team, and keeping up with the endless demands of a growing startup. Yet, her thoughts often drifted to Ethan Lancaster, the enigmatic billionaire who had collected her ex's old ring and revealed himself as a key player in her company's potential acquisition. She couldn't shake the memory of his calm authority, the warmth behind his gaze, and the subtle respect he had shown her. Clara's phone buzzed mid-morning with a calendar notification. "Meeting with Ethan Lancaster. Conference room A, 10 a.m. Her pulse quickened. This meeting wasn't just business, it carried weight. She reviewed her notes meticulously. Projections, financial statements, and strategic growth plans. She knew Ethan's sharp mind would notice everything, so she had to be precise, poised, and confident. Arriving at the conference room, Clara found Ethan already seated, reviewing a tablet. His posture relaxed yet commanding. He looked up as she entered, offering a faint, polite smile. "Clara," he said, rising slightly. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." "Of course," Clara replied, setting her laptop on the table and adjusting her notes. "I want to ensure all questions are answered thoroughly." Ethan nodded, gesturing toward the chair across from him. "Please. Let's start with the projections and your recent milestones." The meeting began with a detailed walkthrough of Claritech's financials, growth metrics, and operational challenges. Ethan listened intently, occasionally asking pointed questions that revealed his analytical prowess. "Your growth trajectory is impressive," he noted, "but there are risks in scalability that need careful planning. How do you intend to manage team expansion without compromising product quality?" Clara explained her strategy, emphasizing careful hiring practices, mentorship programs, and maintaining the company culture that had driven their early success. Ethan nodded thoughtfully, clearly impressed by her foresight. "I can see you've thought this through," he said. "Many founders overlook the human element while chasing numbers. You've balanced both." Just as Clara felt a wave of relief that the discussion was going smoothly, her ex, Ryan, unexpectedly appeared in the lobby outside. He had somehow learned of the meeting and seemed determined to insert himself into the process. Clara's chest tightened as he stepped toward the conference room, his expression a mix of arrogance and feigned authority. Ethan noticed immediately, his eyes narrowing slightly. He rose, positioning himself near Clara, a subtle yet unmistakable protective presence. "Ryan," he said calmly but firmly. "This meeting is private. Please wait outside." Ryan smirked, clearly expecting to intimidate her. "I have every right to be involved. She's my former fiancé, and Noah." Ethan interrupted, his voice low, controlled, and undeniably authoritative. "Your relationship with her doesn't grant you control over this company, nor access to this meeting. Step back, or I will ask security to escort you out." Clara felt a surge of gratitude and relief. Ethan's calm decisiveness diffused the tension instantly. Ryan, realizing he had underestimated the stranger's authority, hesitated, then reluctantly stepped back into the lobby, seething. Once the threat was neutralized, Ethan returned to the table, his eyes meeting Clara's. "Are you all right?" he asked softly, concern lacing his voice. Yes," she said, adjusting her notes. "Thank you for that." The meeting resumed, but the dynamic had shifted subtly. Clara felt a newfound confidence. Ethan's protection, his respect for her independence, and his composed handling of external interference made her realize that she could trust him, not just as a potential business partner, but as someone who valued her judgment and capabilities. As they delved into more strategic discussions, the conversation shifted from numbers to vision. Ethan asked about Clarateca's long-term goals, her ambitions, and her philosophy of leadership. Clara spoke candidly, explaining her dedication to innovation, ethical business practices, and fostering a supportive environment for her team. Ethan listened, occasionally leaning forward, clearly captivated not just by her intelligence, but by the integrity and passion behind it. After hours of discussion, they paused, reviewing key takeaways and next steps. Ethan's gaze lingered on Clara, a subtle but clear mixture of admiration and intrigue in his eyes. "You've demonstrated not only capability but resilience," he said quietly. "The way you handled today, the challenges, and even the disruption outside, remarkable." Clara felt her cheeks warm. "I've had to be," she murmured. "There's no room for mistakes when you're responsible for so many people's livelihoods." Ethan's lips curved into a faint smile. "Exactly why I respect you, and why I want to ensure this process, this acquisition, is done with both your input and your vision honored." As the meeting concluded, Ethan stood and walked Clara to the door. "This is just the beginning," he said, his tone calm but carrying an unspoken promise. "I want to be a partner not just in business, but in supporting the path you've worked so hard to create." Clara paused, taking in the sincerity in his words, the calm authority, and the subtle warmth that had been present since their first encounter. I look forward to seeing what we can accomplish," she replied softly, a flutter of curiosity and anticipation stirring in her chest. As she left, Clara realized that the stranger who had collected a simple ring was no ordinary man. He was a billionaire CEO, a strategic mind, and now a presence in her life that was reshaping her professional and personal world. The slow burn tension between them had begun, built on mutual respect, admiration, and the shared goal of safeguarding the company she had worked so hard to create. The encounter left her both exhilarated and cautious, knowing that while the path ahead would be filled with challenges, it was also filled with unexpected possibilities, and perhaps a connection that extended beyond the boardroom. After the intense boardroom-style discussion with Ethan, Clara found herself thinking about him constantly. His presence, calm yet commanding, had left an indelible impression. She hadn't just returned a ring. She had unknowingly connected with someone who could change the trajectory of her company, and perhaps her life. Later that evening, Ethan invited Clara to a quiet rooftop lounge near the office, explaining that the view and privacy would provide a better setting to discuss the finer details of the acquisition, without distractions. Clara arrived with a mixture of curiosity and cautious anticipation. Noah safely settled with a trusted nanny for the short meeting. The lounge was serene, with dim lighting reflecting softly off the glass panels and the cityscape glittering below. Ethan stood as she arrived, offering a warm, professional smile that still carried an underlying softness. "Clara, thank you for coming," he said as she approached. She nodded, settling into a chair across from him. Of course, she replied. I want to ensure we discuss everything thoroughly. They began by reviewing projections, growth strategies, and team structures. Ethan asked thoughtful questions, carefully listening to her responses, showing respect for her expertise. Clara was impressed by the depth of his understanding and how he valued her opinion. There was no rush, no pressure, just attentive focus and measured dialogue. As the conversation flowed, it moved beyond pure business. Ethan asked about Clara's vision, her personal motivations for starting the company, and how she balanced her responsibilities. She spoke openly about the challenges, her fears, and her aspirations. Ethan listened, occasionally leaning forward with subtle admiration, his voice softening as he complimented her resilience and foresight. You've managed so much on your own, he said quietly, and with such grace. That's rare. Clara smiled faintly, a mixture of humility and acknowledgement. I've had to. But I've also had to trust my instincts and make hard decisions. Ethan's gaze lingered on her, the intensity softened by warmth. Your instincts are impressive. And your courage, both personal and professional, is admirable. You've earned more than recognition. You've earned trust. The air between them shifted subtly, the tension no longer just professional. It was laced with a slow, burgeoning intimacy, born from mutual respect and admiration. Clara felt a rare comfort in his presence, a safety she hadn't expected from someone she barely knew. After discussing business, they paused to take in the city view. The soft night breeze and distant sounds of the city created a quiet intimacy. Ethan gestured to the skyline. Sometimes you just need perspective, he said. Seeing the bigger picture helps make sense of all the small, pressing details. Clara nodded, her thoughts drifting from the office to her company, to her own personal journey, and to the stranger who had entered her life unexpectedly. She realized that his support wasn't just about business. It was about respect, trust, and the acknowledgement of her capabilities. For a moment, they sat in silence, each aware of the other's presence. Ethan's eyes softened as he looked at her. Clara, I want you to know that my intentions are genuine, he said quietly. I respect you, your work, and your vision. I'd like to be someone you can trust, both professionally and personally. Clara felt a flutter in her chest, a mixture of hope, caution, and curiosity. She had faced betrayal and disappointment, yet here was someone offering unwavering support and respect. She allowed herself to meet his gaze fully, acknowledging the connection forming between them. The rooftop lounge, the quiet city lights, and the gentle ambience became the backdrop for a subtle emotional turning point. Trust had been solidified, admiration recognized, and the beginnings of slow-burn romance quietly emerged. By the time Clara left the lounge, she felt a sense of calm she hadn't known in weeks. The stranger who had once received a simple ring had now become a figure of support, stability, and intrigue in her life. The evening had solidified a bond built on courage, integrity, and the shared vision of something greater than either of them alone. The following evening, Clara arrived at a quiet rooftop garden atop a boutique hotel downtown. Ethan Lancaster had suggested the location for a private discussion about the acquisition, away from the public eye and the constant hum of the city. The soft ambient lighting reflected off the glass panels, creating a tranquil, almost cinematic atmosphere. Clara held her notebook tightly, her pulse quickening, not just from the meeting, but from the lingering curiosity about Ethan himself. Ethan was already there, standing near the edge of the terrace, hands casually in his pockets, his sharp suit contrasting the casual elegance of the surroundings. When he noticed Clara, he straightened, a faint, welcoming smile forming. "Clara," he said smoothly. "Thank you for coming." Clara offered a polite nod, taking a seat across from him. "Of course," she replied, trying to keep her tone neutral while her thoughts raced. Ethan began by reviewing the strategic plans for Claritech, highlighting key areas for growth, potential investor interest, and operational improvements. He asked detailed questions, but they were never patronizing. Instead, they demonstrated respect for her expertise. Clara found herself explaining her decisions, her strategies, and her philosophy on company culture, realizing that Ethan genuinely wanted to understand her vision. As the discussion progressed, Ethan shifted the focus subtly from business metrics to leadership and personal philosophy. "Running a company isn't just about numbers," he said quietly. "It's about vision, integrity, and how you treat people. I've noticed you've balanced all three remarkably well." Clara felt a flush of surprise and faint pride. "I try to do my best," she admitted. "But I never expected anyone outside my team to notice." Ethan's gaze softened, an almost imperceptible warmth breaking through his composed exterior. "It matters," he said. "It matters that you've maintained integrity while growing something meaningful. That's rare." For a moment, they were silent, watching the city lights reflect in the puddles left by earlier rain. Clara felt the weight of the past few weeks. The ring, the unexpected meeting, the surprise revelation of Ethan's identity, beginning to settle into clarity. She realized that the man before her was not only powerful but genuinely respectful and attentive, qualities she hadn't expected from a billionaire CEO. Ethan leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. "Clara, I want to be clear about my intentions. This acquisition isn't just about business. I want to ensure your vision, your team, and your legacy are protected. And personally, I want to be someone you can trust fully." Clara's heart skipped a beat. Trust was something she had learned to guard fiercely, especially after betrayal. But the sincerity in Ethan's tone, his calm assurance, and the genuine respect in his eyes were difficult to ignore. I appreciate that," she whispered. "It's not easy for me to let someone in, even for guidance." Ethan's faint smile deepened. "I understand. And I don't expect anything beyond what you're comfortable with. But I hope that over time, you'll see I am here not just for business, but to support you." The conversation moved to lighter subjects, shared interests, small anecdotes about the challenges of managing a growing business, and subtle humor that made Clara relax. She noticed herself glancing at him more often, realizing that his presence was reassuring, stabilizing, and quietly magnetic. By the time the meeting concluded, Clara felt a mix of professional clarity and personal intrigue. She realized that she could trust him with the company, but perhaps also with her own vulnerability. As she gathered her things, Ethan walked her to the edge of the terrace, his stance protective but unobtrusive. "Whatever you decide about Clara Tech," he said, his voice low and firm, "know that I respect you, your leadership, and your vision. And I hope we can continue building trust beyond business." Clara met his gaze, her pulse quickening. I'd like that," she murmured, a faint smile playing at the corners of her lips. No words were needed beyond that. The rooftop, the city lights, and the subtle rain-scented breeze became the backdrop for a connection that had grown quietly but profoundly. Trust had deepened, admiration had solidified, and the seeds of slow-burn romance had been planted. As Clara left the terrace, she glanced back at Ethan, who watched her with a calm, confident presence that made her heart flutter. The encounter had transformed from a simple business discussion into a turning point, where respect, trust, and the potential for something deeper began to intertwine, setting the stage for the final resolution.